Welcome to the Midi Quest export tutorial. We decided to do a single tutorial for this because exporting from a patch bank or a patch window or a collection or a set basically does exactly the same thing. So we'll have it work from a set and then we'll cover the few variations that exist. When you right-click and get your pop-up menu, you'll see there is an export submenu in all of the windows I previously listed. There are then two submenus. One is Save SysEx As, and one is Bank Names As. The SysEx As submenu handles exporting of the actual data that is stored. The Bank Names As does exporting of the name data that is stored in the window. So SysEx As, the first option is Midi File, and what this will do, if I select it, you'll get a file selector up. I'm going to put everything in the desktop, and you simply type in a file name, hit the Save button, and what this does is it literally saves all of the data stored in the window into a single standard MIDI file and saves that to disk. So it saves the song data, the performance bank, the voice bank, whatever you have in here for a set. If you perform this option from a bank, then it saves just the bank within a standard MIDI file. From a single patch editor, obviously it saves just the patch data. From a collection, it saves the currently selected entries in the collection. And what this allows you to do, if you want, is to save the SysEx out to a file that then could be imported into a sequencer where that sequencer is happy receiving a lot of pieces of SysEx, or if it's the only way that you can get SysEx into your sequencer and you want to get the current SysEx into your sequencer. The next option is Midi X. Now, Midi X file format you'll frequently see on the web and has been around for a long time. Essentially, it is just the SysEx data saved to disk as a binary format file. It's very easy to move from place to place, from computer to computer. For Cakewalk and Sonar, it is the native working file format. If you open up their SysEx window, you'll see that that window wants to import SysEx in the Midi X or .syx file format. Some other sequencers don't do anything, don't recognize this file format at all. Many editor librarians work natively in this format. So this being able to export this way is a good way to be able to move SysEx data from Midi Quest into another application if you need to do it. Again, from the set window, if you choose this option, you'll get a file selector up. Type in a name, press the Save button, and Midi Quest will save the data to disk. Again, in the case of the set, it essentially saves all of the SysEx data stored in the various components in the set window. For a bank, you would be saving all of the SysEx within the bank. For a patch, you would be saving the SysEx data in the patch. For a collection, you would be saving the SysEx data from each of the elements in the collection that you currently have selected. The next export option is text. And what Midi Quest does here, if you choose the text option, oops, I missed it. Okay, let's do this again. Export text. Here, Midi Quest saves the data off to disk in a text file format. Now, let's wait for this to open up. I've made the mistake here of creating a very large file, so it's taking quite a while to load. The file is 7 megabytes, and what it literally is a text representation of all of the SysEx data. Here we go. All of the SysEx data that is stored in this set. So you have song data. It's just basically everything. Master keyboard data, everything that that you have in this window is saved off to disk. You've got an offset for the data type, the actual data. It looks, you should recognize that it looks very much like the contents of the SysEx view window if you have Midi Quest XL. This is the actual raw hex display of the SysEx. And on the right side, you have a character equivalent to the SysEx. The dots over here represent characters, binary SysEx values that don't have a character equivalent. So if you wanted to, for whatever reason, get Midi Quest SysEx data in a text-readable form because you wanted to incorporate it into a report as text, or you had some sort of application that was capable of reading this data, you can export it all in this format. Again, like the others, exporting of text from a set, you get all of the elements. From a bank, you just get the contents of the window, which is the bank data, and so on. Now we'll have a look at bank name options. These are extremely useful in that you can actually export all of the names from the banks into some of the most commonly used name formats by sequencers so that you can view your patches by name literally in your sequencer. So the first option is Sonar Cakewalk, and if you choose this, you get a file selector. And what you need to do here is to go into your Cakewalk or Sonar folder and find your master INS file. Master INS file, well, actually this export you can do two different ways. The first way is through the master INS file. If I choose this, Midi Quest will literally take all of the names from all of the banks and it will write them into the INS file along with the structural information, and if I run Sonar here, go into Instruments, you'll see that you've got user instruments and you can assign each instrument to a channel. Now if I hit the, well, I don't even need to hit the Define button. There is the instrument that we have just exported, and now I can assign that to each of the MIDI ports and MIDI channels that that instrument uses. Press the OK button, and now if I create a, let's just create a new project and insert a MIDI track. Expand this out. So you can choose by port. If I say that that is motif 6, then I have all of my banks available. Now I can just choose a bank, and then I have all of my patches by name. If I select a different bank, whoops, I get the appropriate group of patches to select from. That makes things very nice and easy, fast. You don't have to type your names into Sonar anymore. If you edit any one of your banks, it's easy to just do another export, and you can keep Cakewalk or Sonar in sync by name with the contents of your instrument, instead of using a static text file that you might have downloaded from the internet that can't keep the user banks in sync with your own editing. All right, I will close this up. Won't save changes. Now before I said there are two ways to export, and the alternative, although it is more work, is to export the names. Again, you choose the same option, only this time, again, I'm going to save this in my desktop. You can save it as a separate INS file. In this case, what happens is Midi Quest just saves all of the relevant information off to off in a separate file. And if you look under Instruments, you then have to hit the Define button and choose Import. And then if I go and look at my desktop, you'll see that I have an INS file. And I can import that, and again, Midi Quest will make all the file here, once you've imported it from the file, will be added in, and you can use it as a selection point for to assign to various instruments, to various tracks, in the sequencer. Now this one is useful if you are, say, going into a foreign studio and you want to be able to save off your names and be able to carry that and import it into the studio's version of Cakewalk or Sonar. Close that up, and we'll have a look at our next option. which is to export as a Cubase script file. This function does for Cubase what the Sonar exporting does for Sonar, with a couple of minor variations. Here, you basically save. Cubase doesn't keep a single master file list. You have to save a collection of individual files, basically one per instrument. And the location where you save them in is also extremely important. Now, if you have an old version of Cubase, then you're going to need to use the file selector, find your installation of Cubase. Beneath that, you'll find a scripts folder. Beneath that, you'll find a patch names folder. That's where you need to save this file. If you're using Cubase SX version 1 and a version below 1.05, then what you have to do is go to the same drive as your Windows installation, find Documents and Settings, and you need to go into the Administrator directory, find the Application Data folder, then Steinberg, then Cubase SX, and then you'll see scripts and you'll see patch names, and you need to store this file in patch names or any folder beneath patch names. Now, for any version of Cubase SX 1.05 or higher, then the storage becomes username specific. So in this case, you again need to find your Documents and Settings, find your username, go into the Application Data folder, find Steinberg, find your version of Cubase, scripts, patch names, stored in patch names, or any folder underneath. Now, the other really important thing that you need to know is this folder, Application Data. By default, it ships as a hidden folder, which means you can't see it. So before you can do any of this, what you have to do is open up an Explorer window. I'll just bring one in. Go to your Tools menu. Go to Folder Options. Go to the View tab and find this option, Hidden Files and Folders. Now you've got to set this to show hidden files and folders and basically update your system to that option. Without that option, you won't have that folder listed and you won't be able to save these files where you need to save them. I'll just close that up. I've already done that setup work. And now I can just hit the Save button. And I'll replace the existing file. And now if I bring up Cubase, there we go. With Cubase open, you go to your MIDI device manager, and I'm going to cheat and I'm just going to remove that one. You hit Install Device, and what you'll get is a list of the scripts that are in your patch names folder or any subfolders. You choose the instrument that you want to add, press the OK button, and you get the option to add a variation to this file if you want. Press OK, and there, you've imported the script file. And here you can connect it up to a particular MIDI port if you like. And I'll connect it up to this one. At this point, you can close up the window. Now, if you look at your projects, I'll just make a MIDI sequence project. What I can do just expand this out, is for my output, I can connect it to the motif ES6, and now if I click here, I'll get a pop-up window that lists all of my banks, and so I can choose any patch I want from any bank I want, and the correct patch change information is encoded into the script file so that I will get that particular patch. Now, Cubase Sonar, the Sonar implementation is nice because there's a single file. If you update your master INS directly, say you you update an instrument, you then want to update the names in your patch, in your master INS file, you can just go to the export, go through the steps, update your master INS file. Midi Quest will find the existing banks that have been stored in the master INS file and replace them with all of the new settings as are currently found within Midi Quest. The next time you run Sonar, bang, you're automatically updated, everything is ready to go. In Cubase, this device manager, when you install devices, you install them into the program. However, from within Cubase itself, these installed devices are saved to disk from session to session in a different file. So, if you update the contents of your instrument, what you have to do is literally come in here, resave your script file, but you have to come into the device manager, delete the current motif ES6 implementation to remove it, and then go in and install device and reinstall the motif in order to update any changes as a result of your Midi Quest editing. Oh, I'll close this up. And we'll have a look at the final option in bank names as from the set window, which is XML. Now, XML, and I'm just going to cancel out of here. XML is a new format that is being used on the Mac by most sequencers. The name extension is .midnam, M-I-D-N-A-M, and actually it is being used by Pro Tools on the PC. And again, it's just a different file format for storing names. The nice thing is it's in the new standardized XML file format. Midi Quest will save to this format, and if you're using a multiple computer system and you're using a Mac, you can and if you've got a network, you can literally export these names right over onto the Mac and use them on the Mac, or you can export them within the PC. If you're using Pro Tools, I'm sorry I don't have a Pro Tools up and running on this computer to demonstrate to you, but it's the same sort of concept. You will save your XML patch names into a folder that Pro Tools can access. It will open up the information and allow you to display and select your patches by name. Now, within the bank editor, if you go to export, you'll see that there are a couple of additional options. The first additional option is text. And what will happen here, I'm going to go back and I'm going to drop this again into my desktop. Let's call this performance names. What this option is doing is taking the names, in this case in the performance bank, and it's allowing you to save these names off to disk just as a text format, simple text format file. And I will show you what it looks like. You have two options when you save. You can put a name per line, or you can use tab delineated names, which can work very well if you are organizing patch names in a database. So here's the output that you get from saving this file. You have a header with some basic file information. Then you have the number as the patch is displayed within Midi Quest, the name of the patch, and then the positional number of that patch within the bank. And again, this allows you to, if you want to take this text, you could import it into some sort of Word document that you're working on as a report. There are people who use a database application to literally track all of their patch or combi names, and then they usually do the exporting in tab delineated format, get this information up with tab separation, and then put it into their database. So I will just close this file up and go back to the bank and have a look at the next export option, which is Cakewalk2.ini. Prior to Cakewalk version 3, they stored all of their names in an INI file as opposed to an INS file. So we're going back. We're not talking about Sonar version 2. We're talking about Cakewalk version 2. So we're going back probably a decade now, at least, back to the early 90s. Midi Quest still supports exporting to this name format. And this name format is also used by at least one other sequencer, that being ProTracks, which is sold by Band in a Box. This format, you export banks of names individually. It will give them a name, and then you can select those banks individually on your sequencer side. It still gives you the opportunity to select your banks by name, but you'll have to do a bit more setup information on the sequencer side. And the final option here is Midi Quest Bank Names INI. This is an INI file format that we use internally. Midi Quest has some internal INI features, so we'll use this to write off banks of names as we build up an INI file of all of the default names for a particular instrument. If you're not doing instrument development, then you don't need to know about this option. If you are, then contact us and we can give you some more information on it. Now, I've covered off all of the basic export options. Hopefully you found that useful. For those who are using Midi Quest XL, there are some additional name options handled by preferences, and these are the name servers. Now, what the name servers do is essentially automate the exporting of bank names for you, so you don't have, basically, you don't have to think about it. You can set it and forget it. So what happens here, if you enable it for Sonar Cakewalk, then you can list up to 10 different master INS files that you want to automatically write to. To add an entry, you simply hit the Add button, find the master INS file that you want to link to, and select it. It will be added to the list. What happens here is that instead of every time you make an update to the user area of your instrument, in order to keep your sequencer, Sonar, in sync with the names, you've manually got to write out this INS file yourself, and then you're in sync. This does it automatically for you. Every time you download a bank to the instrument from a set, Midi Quest will go and regenerate all of the information stored in each of the master INS files that you list. And this makes things much easier because Midi Quest automatically keeps that INS file in sync for you. The one difference between this and our previous discussions is any automatically generated file using the name server has SQ in brackets to the right. So you can easily distinguish instruments that have been saved to the master INS file by the name server and handled automatically, as opposed to those that you have generated manually for whatever purpose. This same feature set applies to Cubase. If you want to enable for Cubase, you simply check the option. And here, you're not looking for a file, you're actually looking for a folder. So again, you go back into the hard drive that has your Windows installation, find the Documents and Settings folder, and you've got this breakdown depending on what version of Cakewalk, what version of Cubase you're using. You're going to handle this differently. I've got SX3 on this system, so I've got to go into my own subdirectory, go into Application Data, find Steinberg, find SX3, find Scripts, and choose Patch Names, and that path will be entered here. If you're running multiple versions of Cubase, obviously you can keep adding paths and you can update each of the directories that you want to update with this tool. And again, what happens here is every time you send data to Midi Quest, to the instrument, Midi Quest will automatically generate and update the Patchscript files for those instruments in the folders that you specify. Again, Midi Quest uses an SQ extension to show that the file was automatically generated by the name server from SoundQuest. And the same proviso as discussed earlier applies. Unfortunately, these script files are not automatically read by Cubase when they're changed. Cubase doesn't track these files, see that there's been a change, and reload them. So we can automatically update these files for you, but for the names to be available inside Cubase, you will have to go into the MIDI devices area, delete out your existing installs, and add in the script file, the updated script files yourself. We're hoping that one day Steinberg will update this facility so you no longer need to do things manually, but for the moment that's how you've got to do it. The final name server is an XML name server, and it works much the same way as described by Cubase. If you want to enable it, check the option, press the Add button. You'll get a folder selector. Go through and specify all of the folders that you want to have XML midname files generated for when you send out dumps to your instruments, and Midi Quest will automatically generate those files for you. Thank you for viewing the Midi Quest export tutorial.